Okay, and welcome back to another video. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the pros and the cons of living in Vietnam. So, hit the subscribe button, hit like, and let's get into the video. Okay, so I've been living in Vietnam for about 11 months now, so I think that's a long enough time to talk about maybe some of the pros and cons of living in Vietnam. Okay, so let's start off with a pro. Okay, so one of the pros of living in Vietnam is the country. So right, Vietnam is one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. Okay, so that doesn't matter whether you're somewhere rural or whether you're in a big city. Anywhere you go in Vietnam, it's just steeped with beauty. So places like Ha Long Bay, Cat Ba Island, Da Nang, Hoi An, all of these places are just absolutely beautiful. So if you ever want to do some travelling and go see somewhere nice, I advise you come to Vietnam, definitely. So one of the cons of living in Vietnam is the traffic. So anyone that's been to Vietnam will tell you how dangerous, how just outright dangerous it is to be here on a bike. So even if you're crossing the road in Vietnam, you've got to look both ways 50,000 times. There's no real rules. There's no real rules to crossing the street here. So my best advice is when you start crossing the road, just walk. Don't stop. Keep a steady pace. Look both ways. The drivers will go around you. It seems like they're going to hit you, or it just seems mentally dangerous, but it's just the way it's done here. There's no real crossing the road here. And I will say I've seen more crashes in Vietnam than I have seen in my entire life in any other country. Okay, so there's crashes here almost every day. Same with every country, but I'd say Vietnam is up there on the dangerous scale. So the con of also having so much traffic here is pollution. So if you go to somewhere like Hanoi is dirty. It's one of my favourite cities, but you cannot ignore that the city itself is quite dirty. Okay, so the air's polluted. It's just not really a clean place. So, but that still makes Vietnam still beautiful. And one more thing about traffic is, so let me explain the traffic light system here. Okay, so green means go, amber means go, and the red light, you guessed it, red light means go. Okay, so here in Vietnam, people, they run red lights. The red lights are meaningless. I don't even know why they're here. People drive on the opposite side of the road, no lights on. People, if the road's blocked, you'll find people driving up the sidewalk, no problem whatsoever. And it's a crazy system. So I'm not surprised why you see so many crashes. I remember being in Hanoi and I was having a coffee on a balcony that overlooked a roundabout. And in about 10 minutes, we saw 3 separate crashes. And they all pretty much happened for the same reason. Like I said, there's no system here. But like going back to my other point, it's a chaotic heaven. There are no rules, but there seems to be these like hidden rules that only the Vietnamese understand. Because if you're a foreigner here, driving here, it just makes no sense. So the first few months I was driving a bike, it was pretty mental, I will say. So the next one on the pros list is food. So I used to be a chef in England, so I've cooked many different cuisines, but Vietnamese food by far is the cleanest. It's a real simple, clean cooking, but the flavours are just so fresh. They use all fresh flowers. They grow a lot of their veg here. The food is amazing. So some of my favourite dishes consist of bún chả, bánh cuốn, bánh xèo, phở gà, phở bò. Yeah, so some of my favourite foods are bún chả, bánh cuốn, bánh xèo, phở. The list goes on. Da Nang. Vietnamese food is just pretty much amazing. So I highly recommend you come here, and the food is cheap. So most dishes here in Vietnam you can get for like between 30,000 and 40,000. The highest you'll pay is 50,000. So 30,000 is about £1 English, and I mean it. You get some real delicious food cooked here. So okay. So the second con of living in Vietnam is the dual pricing system. Okay, so you might be in a shop buying something that a Vietnamese local is buying exactly the same, and you'll hear a certain price for them. And when it comes to you, they see your skin and they think money, money, money. So your price is automatically higher. So this does happen. It happens in most of Asia, not just Vietnam, but it does happen. So they see a Westerner, they think you're on holiday, they think you've got loads of money to burn. So why not chuck a few thousand on there, you know? So, but I will advise, if you're going to come to Vietnam, I advise you speak the language a little bit. If you go in there, so I negotiate in Vietnamese. I'm not fluent by any means, but I go in there, I know the basics. So when I go in, I negotiate in Vietnamese. So I think as soon as they hear me talking Vietnamese, they know I'm not necessarily a tourist, you know. So, but the rule of thumb when you're in Vietnam, so they will give you a price. I'd say slash that price in half and then start bargaining upwards from there. So that's your best bet, okay? Because they're always going to start higher, but they will go for less, okay? So, but don't take the piss. Like, it's cheap anyway, you know. So, but the point is, if it's meant to be this price, you shouldn't be overpaying, even if it's cheap. So keep that in mind. Don't take the mickey, but don't pay extra if you don't need to, you know. So, okay, the next pro of Vietnam is the people. So I've travelled many places, but I can tell you that by far the Vietnamese people are among the friendliest people I have ever met on the planet. So sometimes, even if you don't speak the language, I'll be walking past a house and I'll just have families invite me in to drink with them, to eat with them. And you'd think walking into a house full of strangers where you don't speak the language can be pretty awkward, but it never really is. We don't speak, I speak a little Vietnamese like I said, but even if you speak nothing, like body language is everything. They give you food, they give you drinks, they'll ask you questions. If you don't understand, just smile and say, "Come here, em come here." It's okay, you know. They just laugh, and I think they're just happy to see you, kind of thing, because it's unusual for the Vietnamese, especially like I live in a rural town, so I'm the only white guy here. I'm literally the only white guy in my town, so a lot of people are just kind of happy to see something different, I guess. So, but yeah, definitely some of the friendliest people I've ever met. So come to Vietnam. So I just touched upon it a little bit. The third con of living in Vietnam is the language barrier. Okay, so if you plan on coming here and speaking no Vietnamese, I think you're going to have a bit of a hard time. But I've been studying for about 5 months now, 5-6 months. So I know the basics. I can get by. I can go in a shop. I can order what I need. I can have small conversations. But I'm glad I started to learn, because like I said, before I learned, you just kind of feel kind of isolated, because like I said, I'm the only white guy in my town. And if you speak no Vietnamese, it's just, I don't know, it's a losing game really. And plus it's nice, they're from other cultures, they live completely different to how I lived, especially when I grew up. The way they grew up is different to how I grew up. So sometimes I really want to ask questions, I really want to know things about them and their life, which is annoying when I can't ask it. So I'm doing my best to learn Vietnamese. So one day hopefully I can speak fluently, or at least decently, and have good conversations. So, but yeah, your life is going to be pretty hard. I suggest you learn the basics. Hello, goodbye, thank you, how much is this, where do I go, where is that, you know, just little things. So definitely advise you learn if you want to have an easier time in Vietnam. The next one on the list for pros is weather. So the weather in Vietnam is amazing. So look behind me, you can see the sun is out. It's currently winter. So back home in England in the winter, it's dark, it's gloomy, like it's just depressing. Like it's still cold here, like it's winter. So this morning on the way to work, I was freezing, but the sun was out, you know. So it's nice to wake up and the sun's out, clear blue sky. It's just a bit cold. So being from the UK, I can handle that. It's not a problem. But in the summer, oh man, it's amazing. So it's really hot. Sometimes it can be too much. I think like in the Vietnamese blood, they can deal with the sun, but just my genetics just don't deal well with the sun. I sweat out in the Vietnamese summer. But again, I'm not going to complain. You can never complain with the sun, you know. We never see it in England. But I will say, when it rains here in Vietnam, it rains. So I'm talking torrential rain. So, but I kind of like it. It's cool if you're not from a country where you get tropical storms. It could be something quite cool to see. So I really enjoy it sometimes. And if you're in your room and the rain's pouring on the roof, it's relaxing. So all in all, I like the weather here. So the fourth con in Vietnam is so burning plastic. Okay, so listen, I'm not perfect. I still go and buy my coffee. It comes in a plastic cup. I get my plastic straws. So I'm not perfect, you know. I'm not the next Greta Thunberg or whatever her name is. But what I will say, the way they discard of plastic and rubbish in general is pretty bad. So you'll see, like, you'll be walking down the road, and this happens in most of Asia, not just Vietnam. You'll see people burning piles of plastic on the side of the road, and it's just so bad. Like, the smoke and fumes that are coming off this is horrendous. Like, you have to hold your breath if you're driving past on a bike, and I just don't know what it's doing to the atmosphere at all. I'm not really a scientist, but I don't think I need to be to know that it's bad. But yeah, I feel there should be a better way to deal with it. And in England, if I started a small bonfire on the side of the road, you best believe in about 2 minutes flat, somebody's going to come and put it out. Someone's going to have a go at me, or the police are going to be called, and I'm going to get my arse hauled off, you know. It's just, you definitely can't do that back home. So, anyway, these are small things. The fifth pro for me is, so I always describe Vietnam as a chaotic heaven. Okay, so you wouldn't think that chaotic and heaven can come together, but Vietnam is somewhere that made me realise that those words can come together. So there's a lack of rules here, so there's a lack of restrictions, but in a good way. So what I mean by in a good way is, so for instance, if you're in Hanoi, it seems like most of the shops here are people's homes. So it seems like if you've got a home, and you've got stuff to sell, you can just set up a shop. So all the shops you go to will just be somebody's home. You'll see the families just relaxing in the front of the shop, kids running around, and it's just, you can tell it's somebody's home, but they're just selling stuff. And that's the same for restaurants and food. So if you own a cooker here and you've got some food, you can just cook it and sell it, which is, it has its good points and it has its bad points. You got to check that the person cooking your food is running some sort of hygiene schedule, you know. So, but my rule of thumb is, if I'm choosing a restaurant, I always go somewhere where it's full of Vietnamese. If the Vietnamese are eating there, I can always be sure that it's going to be good. Okay, and the fifth and final con for me is, so like I said, being the only white guy in my town is a bit stressful sometimes. Not for my reasons, but if I'm in Hanoi, there's tourists everywhere. So the Vietnamese are a bit more normalised to seeing a white guy. But like I said, I'm in a little farmer's town, and I'm the only white guy here, so sometimes I'll be sitting here just relaxing, and I'll have whole families standing at my gate, just pointing and saying, "Tay, tay, tay." So tay means foreigner. So they're not used to seeing foreigners around here, so I can understand why it's amazing. But if I'm just sitting here relaxing, you know, I've got my shirt off, I'm just smoking a cigarette, and I've got a whole entire family pointing at me like I'm a tiger in the zoo, you know. But I've kind of got used to it. When I first got here, it was a bit stressful, but it's okay. I wish I could just walk into a restaurant or walk into a shop without the entire restaurant turning around and staring at me or talking about me. But I will say, there's no malice in it. They don't mean bad. They're not talking rudely about me. They're just shocked to see a white guy in a town where there is no white guys, you know? So it's okay. Like I said, I'm getting used to it. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. Remember, everything I said, these are just my opinions. This is my experience living in Vietnam. Your experience could be totally different to mine, depending on where you live, who you met, and what you did in Vietnam. So, but overall, I love this country. It's one of the best countries I've ever been to. I've never felt so at home in a country that's so different to mine. So, cool. Like I said, if you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate the support. And tune in for the next video. Cool. Thank you very much.